To absolutely nobody's surprise, the price of Magic the Gathering has skyrocketed in the last 10 years. Specifically in Modern, we see that the price of decks have nearly doubled in cost, and that's actually more than adjusting for the price of inflation. And that's, I think, the craziest part that no one is understanding. It's not just about the reprints we've gotten, but the staples that have come along the way that have really just been shoved down our throats. And it's kind of what I want to talk about today. As your favorite Magic the Gathering drama channel, I want to talk about some recent research, not done by me, but by Saffron Olive, that goes to show what it means to price into one of apparently Magic's most played constructed format, and how that might not actually be the smartest thing you can do. Let's talk about some of the factors that might lead up to this, and maybe some conclusions that we could hypothesize outside of it. Let's talk about the tweet. Seth says that he was thinking about the cost of Modern today, and so he did some research. Back in 2014, the average cost of one of the 12 most played decks in Modern was $460. Today, that's $929, nearly double that in the last decade. First of all, I had a real amount of fun with this list here. First of all, Affinity at 409. Was it just Mox Opal bringing up this price? What was the price in this deck? But Mono Red Burn being like $60 is amazing. Merfolk being $200 is insane, because right now this is probably quadruple this price considering the staples in there and the counter spells. I mean, Kiki Pod, Tron, like, it just, what a time. But that sounds pretty boomer. I mean, if you look at Modern right now, Rachno Scam at $1,200. It's much worse. And I mean, 4 or 5 color Omnat. This was like nearly a $1,700-$1,800 deck, like when Fury was legal, right? Because you had playsets of all the elementals, and Temur Prowess is relatively approachable if you think about like the price of standard decks. Boros Burn a lot more now, but it was mono red back then without like Boros Charms and Lightning Helixes. Once Boros Charm was printed, then you played Charm and Helix. Now, I mean, you know, again, still more expensive because of some of the staples that you play, but definitely you're paying at least $1,000 to be playing Modern right now. So some of the things that, you know, he kind of talks about is that, yes, inflation is part of it, but not most of it. According to the CPI inflation calculator, $460 in 2014 is equivalent to $606 today. Oh, Lord, I told you. So obviously, you know, this doesn't account for everything. This is a rough calculation of this, but I think it can inform us at least a little bit of some of the things that we can look out for in this format. The odd part is that Wizards has done a good job reprinting cards in Modern, and I think this is a very key point here. Fetch lands are cheap, shock lands are cheap, but there are so many expensive cards that the cost of the format has still increased a surprising amount over the last 10 years. And I want to point this out as my DMs are going off, apparently. But the cost of cards is kind of like a monkey's paw situation. For so many years, us as players and content creators before me have talked about reprinting cards. Wizards of the Coast they need to do a better job of reprinting cards, and they realize that they can't really acknowledge the secondary market, and in not doing so, they've just found a better product. For those of you maybe newer to the format or newer to Magic, you might not know about Modern Masters. Modern Masters was the reprint set of old. They did about 3 or 4 of them, and honestly, they weren't that popular in my opinion. I don't think they actually did a really good job. They reprinted a bunch of cards, but they would do so at like rare or mythic or upshift them, or you would have like this whole Comet Storm issue where Comet Storm is like a 50-cent card, but it'd be printed at mythic to try and, like, you know, for limited purposes or whatever. We all know why. It's to make sure not every pack was a hit. And that product failed. So what they saw was, okay, we can't really actively print fetch lands, but we can do so in shock lands. So they've kind of developed the story in such a way where shock lands are pretty actively available in standard, because that was a way for them to create playability in standard, but also because of formats coming onto Arena, they wanted to make the more eternal formats also playable and accessible on there as well. So they had ample printing of those fetch lands, or not fetch lands, I should say, shock lands on the format. So you always had good mana bases, and that felt like cleaner play in standard. That was a good addition to that, and so prices went down. Now when it came to printing fetch lands, they're like, wait, it can't just be fetch lands. Let's make Modern Horizons. And Modern Horizons is the real downturn of all of this, because yes, we got reprints of fetch lands, but we also got printing of the elementals, we got printing of Ragavan, Renin 6, Force of Negation, cards that realistically, they're way more expensive and unapproachable than the fetch lands. The One Ring is a notable problem. Orcish Bowmasters, I mean, Orcish Bowmasters, I guess, is a little bit easier to print because of name, but the One Ring, woo, wow, that is a card that literally will not be printed again without some type of special licensing. So I honestly, you should be picking up a playset. You should be picking up a playset or more just to spec onto it, because I got a copy for Commander, that's it, right? But these are the type of cards that are now being shoved down through us from universes beyond. Staples that exist in the modern format, and you don't think this is going to happen in Assassin's Creed. We're going to get some type of modern playable staple, some EDH playable staple that is going to be IP locked, and heck, it's happening in Fallout already. For those of you not aware of some of the cards that are insanely powerful in that format, go look at some of the precons, some of the staples in that deck, some of the commanders. They're really, really powerful in terms of the energy payoffs they have, as well, just bolstering our archetype that we're also getting further bolstered in Modern Horizons 3. These are the type of staples that, you know, it's not just about reprinting fetches and shocklands. If they reprint fetches and shocklands, yes, they are more approachable. Like, we had like Scalding Tarns at like $20 at some point. It was really, really affordable to make your mana base, generally speaking, in Modern at some point. But that doesn't make the decks cheaper if Ragavans are crazy prices. If we start having cards that start approaching like old Tarmogoyf levels of prices, it's absolutely insane where some of these cards have gone. I mean, like, the reason that Saffron Olive was doing this was digging for budget magic, and you know, it's getting increasingly harder to build budget decks at $100 because, you know, the decks are just not competitive. They're not viable, and like, you know, you have to increase the budget to $150 to $200 to account for how expensive these formats are, and that can be really unapproachable for people. Magic is a really unapproachable game in terms of price for many people. There are free-to-play avenues for it, and I will acknowledge that, especially on Arena, but those can take time. And so you create this environment of FOMO where you feel like you don't have the cards you need to compete, you're not winning games, and you're just not having a good experience. So a lot of folks just then go to Commander, where you can curate your own experience. You can play budget decks. You can use really interesting cards to actually get ahead because people aren't prepared for them. There's a lot of exploring in the format. There's a lot of options. And that's really just where the natural progression of this game is going at this moment. And I think that's the frustrating thing with stuff like this. And this is why I'm frustrated. Because again, that whole monkey's paw situation where we feel like we asked for something, but it was given to us. It was given to us in the most backhanded way that it could possibly happen. And that is the frustrating part. And really, that's what this video is. That's, you know, just me kind of venting on that frustration that they solved the reprint issue, but gave us a whole new one. We got what we wanted, but with more problems, right? I mean, she's still trying to keep decks as cheap as possible, but if the choice of adding another $50 of cards to make the deck work or not playing the deck at all, I might just increase the budget and play the deck, because yeah, you want to enjoy the deck, you want to show that the deck has legs and win, because it, unfortunately, is not just about feeding to the casuals all the time, because the casuals are being fed by Commander all the time. The constructed casuals are a little bit more involved, right? They're a little bit more enfranchised, in my opinion. And I mean, look at this by Soulcare. The comparison greatly understates the cost of Modern. Once $460 deck was built, you could stay competitive over time with minor upgrades. Now, every 1 to 2 years, you mostly need a new, $900 deck. And I think that's also a very relevant thing to say. And I will acknowledge that, as probably a Magic boomer myself, you know, maybe not being that old, but the average age demographic of this game at this moment, I acknowledge that I was part of the original Modern crew that bought into a deck and you needed to do minimal upgrades and you could compete with it, but I'm happy we got upgrades. I think for a lot of people that explore different archetypes or see archetypes ebb and flow, I mean, the joke of Scalding Tarn players and Steam Vent players having to constantly switch between different strategies, from Twin to some type of Snapcaster build to some type of Blue Moon to Murktide right now. And, you know, it always feels like a new evolution to go through, that your deck rotates with every Modern Horizons that comes out. And now the Eldrazi players are just eating hard, but the problem is the price of some of the cards that are entering the format for the Eldrazi players are actually really expensive. So is that something that they're going to be able to do at all? Are the Eldrazi players actually eating, or are they priced out of the expensive 5-star Michelin restaurant that Wizards of the Coast is presenting as their Modern format? I don't know. Honestly, I think it's, you know, I'm in a very unique spot. I'm in a very privileged spot, being able to afford certain cards in Modern, being built into Modern Mill, having a lot of staples that I have. I'm stuck into one deck, and I'm part of the rental program, part of the MTGO creator program, so I get a lot of benefits with those programs to be able to play the decks I have to provide you with the content that I have. That's not for the average consumer though. And I think that's really the frustrating part. I think of myself as someone, as a consumer who might go play at an LGS. I think about the cost of that. I think about, having to metagame for a certain local. If it's really up against mill, like really anti-mill, like should I just build into another deck? And then I look into another deck and I'm like, holy, the price of this is insane, right? I was thinking about building Affinity before Modern Horizons 3 because it was really just the Urza Sagas that were expensive. You just bite on those, everything else is cheap. But now, I mean, who knows with Kappa Cannoneer and how everything settles down in terms of prices. But I think that's where our modern format has really landed. And I think I'm pretty frustrated with that. It sucks that we got what we want, but again, in the most backhanded way possible. But I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the rising price of Modern? Do you think it's unapproachable? Do you feel like you as a Modern player have been able to make average upgrades and keep up with the Modern format? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below on this, controversial topic from your favorite Magic the Gathering drama YouTuber. Let me know what you think about some of these prices. I mean, hey, comment down below if y'all were playing Modern way back here. I mean, if y'all were playing Modern way back here, I want you to comment Splinter Twin. I want everyone to comment Twin in the comment section, and then let me know what y'all were playing at this moment in Modern. Let's have a little discussion about the old days, but also what are some potential solutions that could come down the line, or else are we just kind of constantly stuck in this cycle of Fortnitification at the moment?